I don't know if my Twitter's hooked up, so I have no idea if it'll even go. Because on my phone, I don't know how it's connected.
That's fine. That's fine. So, hey, folks, this is Mike Kegley with Brad Sturdy. We're going to give you a few minutes here for your drive home on a beautiful rainy night in central Illinois. We only get Brad in the car if we can make sure that the weather's somewhat challenging for him. Brad, you got an opportunity to see central Illinois in the dark and the rain. That's the worst time that for old people like us to drive. Give us a kind of a summary of what you saw. I thought from watching from afar that this game, no team could ever get rhythm for an extended period of time. What jumped out at you?
It was ugly. I mean, there were 36 combined turnovers. There was one stretch in the second half where the teams combined to shoot 2 for 22 over about 6 minutes. I mean, to be honest, they could have stopped at half court and pulled up and probably scored more. So just pretty ugly in that regard. But it's kind of to be expected. Oakland wants to play that way. I wrote about it in the preview. I talked about how they want to have long possessions and then make you take a bad shot because you get anxious and want to do that.
Yep.
That's what they did. And it played out exactly. They play that kind of a weird matchup zone, and they took away – they didn't come and help inside. They basically said they forced guys – they didn't let guys have straight line drives. They forced them – Campy kept telling them you got to force them to nail, which is, they're in the paint. And force them there, so they hit him. He wanted to – basically, you think about his philosophy, it was very similar to philosophy what Underwood likes to do. He doesn't want them to shoot threes. Now, Illinois got 25 threes off despite that, but a lot of those were in transition. Now, Oakland plays that defense. They didn't help. They didn't collapse. So then Ivicic got a ton of shots in the paint. They put KJ in there. He got a couple free throws, and Illinois was able to get inside, but it's very difficult to have a rhythm against that defense. And what happens is when then you miss some shots, and then you get anxious. You start forcing a few here and there. And you saw that Illinois is a young team, and they didn't stay patient. Now, the one thing that I did like, Illinois continued to defend. They did a really nice job defensively for the most part. On those stretches of the first half, I thought they were a little soft. They got beat on some cross screens in the post, but overall, they did a really good job defensively, defending ball screens, contesting shots, and they're learning how to win a tough game, a game that's physical. That game was rough. I mean, that was as physical as a Michigan State game. That was just one of those teams where these guys were just beating on each other, and it allowed them to grab. They allowed them to hold. They allowed them to move on screens a lot. I mean, just a lot of those things. So it was one of those rough and tumble games, and they were able to come out with a win. And hopefully you learn from it and you grow from it. And next week's going to be a lot different because Alabama's going to get up and down. They're going to want to run. It's going to be fast-paced. It's going to be a totally different animal. So trying to extrapolate what's going to happen in the future out of this game isn't very easy to do.
Yeah, the only concern I have after watching this, because it is a team that may not be young, but it is a team with not a lot of big-time college experience yet, is if I'm their coach, I'm going to try to make it as physical as I can to see if I can knock these guys off their line and see if I can, get in their head a little bit and make it hard for them to play. Beyond that, I don't know what else I really got out of this game.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. But I do think this team's young, too. I mean, Kasparas, Will Riley, even, we talked about Kylan Boswell being his third year. Remember, he came out early, right? Yep. So he's really a sophomore age-wise, even though he's in his third year playing. Ivicic is 21, but he's the sophomore. But he's, he's not played college basketball. And this is a different game. Underwood made a great point talking about, KJ and struggling, with the 5 turnovers night. He said, well, he's never seen a zone because they don't play zone in Europe. They play man-to-man, so it's a different thing. He wants to get in ball screens and go, and he's a great passer. You see him do some things when he gets in space. But against the zone, it was different. It was hard to make reads. It was hard to find some things. I still thought, even though he only had 3 assists, they missed a lot of chippies. He probably could have had 6 or 7 assists very easily. And then it looks a little different when you have 7 assists and 5 turnovers instead of 3 assists and 5 turnovers. So this is where, this is that youth, and they'll get better. And I thought that they showed some promise even in a game that wasn't very good because they're getting better at doing the things we were worried about all year, and that's defending. They have to get stronger with the basketball, though. They still make a lot of soft plays and get the ball taken from them. Just got to be a little bit tougher with the ball. And I think that's going to be something I guarantee Brad Underwood's going to focus on over the next week.
Yeah, that is definitely the case. As I look at it, obviously, Ivasic was, very good today. He is, I guess, Illinois for the time being. Brad Underwood and Matt Painter know how to go through a really strong five, and boy, he is going to do a wonderful job for that Illini team on nights when things aren't going well.
Yeah, and wait till he starts making threes. Yeah. I mean, that's what he was. He was known to be more of a 3-point shooting big who could just stretch the floor and things like that. Well, he's been really good inside. He's got that little mid-range, little floater, and he's gonna be really good. I think he's literally an all-conference level big man. I mean, I think he can be an all-conference player. That's pretty good. What's he averaging? 18 a game right now. So almost 18 points a game through 3 games. I'm not saying he's going to average that, but you get 15 and 7 or something like that from the center position. Man, you throw in Merez coming in for some energy. He gets 3 points and 4 rebounds, and that's a great duo at the center spot.
Did Merez get a little less time tonight? Maybe less so because of his play, but the fact that they really couldn't have Tomislav off the sitting on the bench because they needed his scoring.
I think it was a combination. So early in the game, Merez came in and he was playing, and he played 4 minutes in each half to kind of give Tomislav a break, and he didn't run the floor. And so he didn't run the floor. He kind of jogged down and didn't go, and Underwood immediately called him out on it. And he said, "Hey, we gotta, you gotta run the floor." And he took him out of the game. He didn't go back in the first half. So I think there was a combination there. I saw when Tomislav was out of the game there, they immediately put in the second half they put Merez in. They put Merez on the dunker spot and put KJ then in the middle, and kind of changed up what they were doing against that zone. So that was I think Merez is going to have different matchups that he's going to fit better with. This was a tough matchup for him today. I mean, this was playing against that zone, the way they play and the way they do things. It was a tough matchup. A lot of learning things that they're going to go on. You saw it was trouble. Really, you think about the freshmen, whether it's Will Riley, Merez Johnson, Kasparas, they all struggled tonight. And because they hadn't seen anything like this, to be honest, and they probably never have.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. One of the things that we talked about earlier is Kasparas. Is it fair to say that he's definitely a team player, but Illinois needs him to shoot more than 3 times a game?
I think so, but you have to also – he's taking 20 free throw attempts too. So
right. Yep.
That's another 10 shots. So is he taking, is it 6, 7 shots a game? He's got a high, pretty good usage rate. But I think he'll get more comfortable as he goes along. He's trying to get everybody involved, trying to feel things out. He's young. I mean, people forget that he's still a freshman. I mean, I know he's talented, and I know he does a lot of great things. But, he's a freshman. We talked about it before the season. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. There might be a game next week when he is, there might be a game in a week or two where he puts up 20 points and that could happen. But, I just don't think there's going to be a game where he is always scoring. Underwood talked about this, too. It was hard for him to feel what he was supposed to do against this zone. He hadn't seen it before. He wasn't seeing it in practice. Their thing was, the first team they played was trapped every ball screen. So what do you have to do if they're point guard and you get trapped? You give it up. You create a 4-on-3 behind you.
Yep.
Then they hard edge. When they hard edge, that creates an opening for somebody else. They hard edge, he has 13 assists. So I think sometimes not everybody's going to play that way. We're going to find people who switch. We're going to see people who, trail, and then he's going to have pull-up floaters. He's going to have things like that. So there's a lot of things they're going to happen. And sometimes people are going to go under screen. We saw Oakland do that, and Boswell had a 3 there at the end. So sometimes that's going to be Kaspar. So sometimes it's how they defend you, and what he has to do is make the right read. That's the most important thing. Like sometimes people worry about who's taking shots or who's doing this. The reality is you got to make the right read, and you got to make sure that you're taking good shots no matter who takes them.
Yep. I thought it was nice to see. I thought in the first half, Riley was more effective than obviously the second half. But the thing I like about him is he doesn't seem to lose confidence. He's got the ability. He believes he's going to score, and I think that's going to come in valuable later in the year.
There's no question. He thinks he can score, and because he's a great scorer. I mean, that's what he is, and that's what you want him to do. Now, the one thing I'll say about Riley is that I thought in the second half too, the physicality of the game wears him down a little bit because he's not he's not physically strong yet.
Yep.
So I think maybe that's too many minutes for him at this point. Probably more like 24 minutes would be better. I think against a team that's this physical, especially. Okay. And so you see him, a lot of those little floaters, little shots were short. They went in and out, or they missed. Those are shots he normally makes. He was I think he was 1 for 6 from 2-point range. Those are all right at the rim, right in the 5 to 7 foot little floaters, things that he does. That's what he does. So that's where I think he'll get better as he gets stronger, but also I think it's a less physical teams. He won't be as worn down. The other thing is, it's the first time probably in his life he's had to chase guys off ball screens. Guys off screens off the ball. Before it was just like, okay, well, I'm 6'8", 6'9", I got long arms, I can just contest that shot without really going hard. Now you got to really fight. You got to really defend. You got to fight on that end, and so it's hard. Even though it's not saying that people aren't in good shape, it's just different. Taking the physical pounding of running into screens and getting screened, and then coming down on offense and getting bodied, it's hard, and it's an adjustment he's going to have to make, and he will. But maybe he's not quite there, ready for the 28 to 30 minutes right now.
Right. No, totally understand that. Any other things here as we get into the late hour here? We want to make sure you can get an opportunity to drive home safely. Any other thoughts that come to mind as you reflect on the game?
Well, I think the biggest thing is you can't extrapolate what's going to happen. Illinois is not as good as they're not going to score 112 against like they did against DIU all the time. They're not going to score 66 very often either. So you just have to. Every game is different. Every matchup is different. Illinois has seen 3 different styles of play through 3 games, and they'll see a totally different style next week against Alabama. This is what you want a young team to do. I will tell you this one thing about Brad Underwood. He wanted them to see these different styles of play because that's how you learn and grow with a young team. And the other thing to remember is last year Illinois went to the Elite 8. They were pretty good. They struggled against Oakland and trailed most of the first half.
Right.
And then ended up winning by 12 points or something like that. So it's not. Sometimes we get caught up in this, and every game's different. Every game's a different battle. You go out and win that one game. You can't win 5 or 6 games in one night. No matter how many shots you make, you can't carry over the points. Or miss. It doesn't carry over either. So I just don't think you can take too much away from this other than it's a great learning experience about being tough with the ball, understanding you can grind out a win. Because when they get into the Big Ten, there's going to be some games that are like this.
Oh God, yes, and you just want to get out with a W and call it a day. So yeah, we've got Alabama coming up on November 20th, and then of course Arkansas on November 28th, and Tennessee on December 14th, Missouri on December 22nd. 4 pretty tough non-conference games. What do you think successful would be for the Illini in terms of a record playing 4 teams that difficult?
And don't forget Duke. Duke's also part of this non-conference too.
That was in February, right. So I figured, I figured we could hold off on Duke, but I was just thinking in the next few weeks.
And they also have in those 4 non-conference games, I think 2-2 would be great.
Okay.
If you go 2-2 there, that's fantastic. anything better than that I think it's gravy. But the other part about this, they also have 2 Big Ten games there in December, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So they've got a couple of Big Ten games they've got to win. So there's 6 high major games in basically the next month. 6 high major games. You'd love to go 4-2 in those games. I think that would be seen as a win. Both Big Ten games are winnable, but they won't be easy. So they're going to have to really compete to get there before they head out. Then after Missouri, then you have the one critter game, Chicago State.
Yep.
And then you go west, right? You got Oregon and Washington. No road trip. So you got a lot. It's not going to be much. There's only a couple easy games left on the schedule. If that's the reality, Chicago State, Maryland Eastern Shore, etc. They've got to really battle and keep getting better so that they can have a chance to put themselves in a good position, a good seed in the NCAA tournament, and a chance to win the Big Ten.
Yep. I totally agree with you. Any final thoughts as we reflect on this game?
No, you got a week. Right, everyone gets weak with this team. I think that's great, and we'll get a see. The other thing I would caution people: Alabama has not looked very good either. They've grinded out some wins and only won by 8 over East State. And then they also had I think it was Arkansas State where they actually were up 3 at halftime, won by 9. So Arkansas has also struggled. So these are all teams that have so many new faces on all these teams. They're all trying to figure each other out, and it's just going to come down to Illinois got a week here to get ready, and Brad Underwood's going to love the fact that he can now harp on these little things, ball security and stuff for the next week. I wouldn't want to be at the practice where they're working on not turning it over the next week because they're going to make sure they're a little bit tougher.
Yeah, that is totally true. And the great thing about Underwood is he's consistently proven that his teams get better as the season goes on. So that gives Illini fans, we're very similar, Ked and I. This is just a game that you look at and you move on to the next one. You don't get too upset about it. But I know people got a little spoiled, averaging 101 points a game or whatever it was the first couple games.
Yep. Yeah, they're still averaging 80-some, so it's not terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I look at this team and I look at it, Ivasic is scoring like a machine. If you get a couple guys feeling comfortable and consistent, Kasparis and Will Riley, if they're each averaging 10 to 14 a game, now all of a sudden you're cooking with fire. So that's definitely a developmental step to keep these guys moving in that direction. And there's probably going to be some tough moments in those 4 games as well as these guys learn in a trial by fire, playing some really good competition.
No question.
Perfect.
Should be fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight, Brad. We really appreciate it. Drive safe as you head back from the game at the State Farm Center.
It only rains when I'm driving home and doing a postgame. Evidently.
Isn't that the truth? As we watch it go totally dark there in the rain. Thanks, Brad.
All right. See you. Bye.
So, folks, if you enjoyed that, of course, you could subscribe to IlliniGuys.com. It's only 27 cents a day. When you get that opportunity, we would love to have you here. We have a community of people who talk Illini sports. They talk guy stuff, and it is a lot of fun. Of course, we have message boards, and that's what really makes it different. Instead of that passive thing where you jump on and maybe you have a subscription to The Athletic and you read what somebody has to tell you and then you move on to your day. Well, with IlliniGuys.com, you can read something that Brad says, or you can hear something that came up in a podcast. You can start a thread and ask us what we were meaning, and obviously we will tell you, of course. So you get that one-on-one communication. And, of course, there are plenty of other Illini fans who are definitely willing to give you an opinion on just about any topic under the sun. So we'd love to have more people there. Just 27 cents a day. You can subscribe, and you get 6 days for free to kick the tires. On the 7th day, we send the bill, and then you've got a subscription for a year. Please take a look at that as well. And of course, if you want to follow Brad or myself on Twitter, you can get Brad at Sturdy32 or me at Mike Kegley. And that's an easy way to get Illini news and all sorts of general guy stuff in your feed. And we don't talk politics, so you don't have to worry about that. That makes it a little bit more fun and a little less stressful. And of course, we have our Illini Guys Sports Spectacular. That's our 2-hour radio show. Please go ahead and subscribe there. It comes out on podcast, or you can go to IlliniGuys.com, hit the radio button, find out which day of the week, Friday or Saturday, your favorite station has it on, and tune in at that time. There are over 20 stations in the state of Illinois alone that run that show, and we are proud to present that to you on a weekly basis. We have our Big Ten show. It's another 2-hour show, Big Sports Radio. You can subscribe at about any podcast distributor there as well. We would love to have more people subscribing to that. And as a final thing to do, IlliniGuys.com has a YouTube channel. Please subscribe there. It allows you to get these type of things, and you don't have to do much. It just shoots over to you, and it is there for you to watch. If you're an Illini fan, if you're a Big Ten fan, if you're just a sports fan in general, we would love to have you. And, of course, we will do our halftime show during the football game this week as Illinois takes on Michigan State at Memorial Stadium Saturday, November 16th, 1:30 p.m. Central, and it will also be broadcast on FS1. Until then, folks, go Illini.